The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine.
The one and only Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
I'm three-time national wrestling writer and broadcaster of the year, Jason Bryant, and I'll bring you news, reviews, previews, and interviews with the most notable names and personalities in wrestling. Subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app by logging on to matttalkonline.com/listen. Short Time is sponsored by Flips Wrestling. Share your attitude and be heard at flipswrestling.com. Now it's time, because you've always got time for Short Time. Episode 269 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jason Bryant. Today, we have a big guest on the show. He's a big personality. And the reason I have to get this guy on is this isn't just episode 269 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. This is officially the 1,000th podcast episode I have released since 2008. And that also involves shows that are on the network. So I've either hosted, edited, or distributed 1,000 podcasts. And the guy we pick to be the 1,000th episode is none other than Royce Alger. Royce, welcome to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
Thank you very much. You didn't say anything about our bar crawl in London, though.
We haven't even. That's going to be one of the stories, Royce. I mean, you can't just give them the key to the entire show.
That's a big deal.
That was a big deal.
I guarantee there's a lot of alcoholics listening to this.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess if you're listening to 1,000 episodes of my podcast, you might have to have something to drink during some of those. But we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But let's just get some background, because you're quite a personality. But there's a generation of kids who are, basically devoid of the Royce Alger experience. So why don't you just give us the 60-second version, well, maybe the minute and 60-second version, which would be 2 minutes, of your entrance into the sport of wrestling. You're from Iowa, wrestled for the Hawkeyes, world silver medalist, but give us the quick Royce Alger version of how you got involved in the sport of wrestling.
Well, I grew up humble beginnings in the little small town hamlet of Lisbon, Iowa, about 25 miles northeast of Iowa City. And I grew up on a farm with four brothers. And a lot of people from the state of Iowa know that we have one of the biggest winning traditions of any school in the state. I think we have the most individual state of recent in the last 40 years. We have the most state titles. So I grew up wrestling. I grew up from a very athletic family with my father's side. They were all Golden Glove boxers. My brother was a two-time Golden Glove. I actually won the Golden Glove state title before I won a state title in wrestling. So very humble. Grew up on a farm. Grew up poor. I always like to say that because it just lets people know that no matter where their position or socioeconomics, that they can come and make it. In fact, we were so poor, locusts came every 7 years and left food. But and I always say the original Hunger Games was Alger Acres. That Jennifer Lawrence could kiss my ass. Any route, won 3 state titles, and I can tell everybody I got a full ride up to the University of Iowa. My old man drove me up in a hog truck. He gave me a full ride up there, and he said, "I'll see you at Thanksgiving." And he dropped me off. That's a true story. But I went to Iowa on a scholarship and, won a couple national titles and got to coach under Gable, got to wrestle for him, coach with him, and got to travel the world with him and primarily the brands. I've competed and traveled with those guys all over the world.
Now, I've just got to know, with the guys that are so serious like Tom and Terry are, that intensity that, you look, I mean, that's just, the soundbite after soundbite is just intense. How do you, which is, you're very, I guess atypical might be a way to describe you. in terms of general demeanor. How do you mesh with the brand? It seems like you guys are polar opposites.
Well, here's the deal. I mesh with them. Here's how I describe my personality. As much, levity in just being jovial and gregarious and laughing, and as much as I am that way, I'm 100% the other way when I'm dialed in. So I'm really, really intense. It just doesn't happen. I just don't walk around like that. No, my Brands boys, they have a hard time taking their game face off. So I try to, you know what? I was moored in music. I was the lead 2 years out of my 4 years in high school. I was the lead in our play in the high school production. I was Conrad Birdie and Bye Bye Birdie, and I was also had the lead in a play called Godspell. So I have music in me, and I think that in itself, diversity, like having a different talent or a different hobby other than wrestling, I think it's helped me balance,
What was it like being an Iowa guy, deciding to go and have the opportunity to wrestle for Coach Gable in the heyday? This is where, Iowa was just smashing teams. Gable was really getting things rolling, and to have that opportunity to wrestle in the state of Iowa, where a large portion of it, the wrestlers, they strive to be Hawkeyes one day. I mean, what was it like to have that realization that this could happen for you?
Well, I'll tell you what, in my situation, it really, even in retrospect, I verbaled to you and I, because the Iowa was going for their 7th straight national title when I was on board, when I was a senior. And eventually I was on a team going for 10. But I went to UNI, and I had a little bit of trepidation about going just because of the finances. I mean, I grew up, but we were humble, like I said. We grew up poor, and it was 6 kids and my mom and dad. We grew up pretty tight to the belt. I can remember one time my dad walking into the living room when we were in the winter, and he said to us, he goes, "Kids, put your coats on. We're going to town." And we started putting our coats on, and said, "Well, Dad, you're taking me to town?" He goes, "No, your mother and I are going. We're shutting the heat off." But back to your comment. It was tough because I had no money, and I got about a 40% scholarship, and I could have went with the full ride. So there was that dynamic too. But then you got, you got all like Heffernan and Kistler, and you had all these national champs that are around my weight, and there was certainly, it wasn't like it is now where you can go and get a starting job. I didn't start at Iowa until my 3rd year there.
So you've got the opportunity to wrestle here. You end up having a pretty good career, as you said. What was it about Iowa that lured you back in to join the coaching staff? I mean, and you've got, again, hard-nosed guys on the staff, and then there's Royce.
Correct. Well, and you can talk to if you ever get around any of the athletes, they'll tell you that, and even Gable, in some of his books that he's written, as far as intensity, I'm like right up there. And I'm not blowing my horn here because I'm on a national podcast or anything. It was tough sledding, but that's where your best athletes come to the top. And like I said, there's no way I could sustain that work ethic in that work level if I didn't have a balance. Now, a lot of people don't realize that the brands they have different moorings where their life, they like guns and fast cars. So that's kind of their deal. Mine is more like a slapstick kind of, the whole world is a play, and everybody's an actor. I just kind of choose to not be real serious all the time, It'll get serious enough as it is.
Well, we're going to put the seriousness away real quick. We have a bunch of questions coming up, and I'm going to interject these throughout the course of the conversation. But we'll start with some of the serious questions first, since we are talking about wrestling and a backstory of Royce Alger. First question is coming from a buddy of mine, Eric Narkowitz, out in Pennsylvania. Let's just say, preface this by he's a Penn State fan. Is it possible for Iowa to get close to the Gable days with Cale and all the talent now being spread across the country?
Well, I'll answer that in a couple of different ways. And I don't like to be a defeatist, and everybody knows that I'm a Hawkeye, true 100%. But you got a guy like you got Tom Ryan in Ohio, where you look back at the career, Iowa, our recruiting, we've got there's a lot of great wrestlers out of Ohio. If they all stay in Ohio, that's going to be a dynamic that was never there. And I just think that we were Gable created something so unlike anything that was around as far as 12 months a year wrestling, and the summer camps fostering more wrestling, where the kids are, you're going through the season doesn't stop. You go through a typical season, you usually had 4 or 5 months to break, but now everybody's going to the training camps. Everybody, can we catch Cale Sanderson? Anybody could be caught. I was actually in a very interesting time with Gable that I was on a team going for 10, and I stuck through it in the late 80s, where we actually didn't win it for about 4 years. Then we won 9 out of 10 in the 90s with, Jimmy Zaleski winning the last 3. So can we catch Cale? Oh, yeah. Can this program – can anybody catch Gable was the thing. I don't think anybody's going to be able to run 10 in a row or 9 in a row. I just don't. I think they're just – the idea of going to Penn State was a great thing. Everybody went there, and heck, we just stole 2 of the biggest recruits in the history of this country right out of Pennsylvania. And you're going to see that dynamic too, where people don't want to be, they want to see somebody top of the line. Penn State is the mark right now. Do I think he can catch Gable? If he wouldn't have redshirted all those guys, I think, who knows what he could have done. But I think there's just too much parity now to run 10 in a row.
What's it like to be that mindset? Like, we compare Iowa to the New York Yankees in baseball because they're the most hated team. Basically, if you ask anybody, they either love them or you hate them. And if you're a Hawkeye fan, you say get over it. And if you're not a Hawkeye fan, you're constantly picking and poking, and the message boards and various things. I mean, Hawkeye Nation's pretty fiercely loyal. And when you come into that atmosphere and you're the most hated team on the planet in the college wrestling atmosphere, what's it mean to be a competitor in that era when you guys just winning so much and it's like dominating and do you think the Penn State guys now are kind of dealing with the same things that you guys dealt with at Iowa?
Oh, they will. They're not there yet. I mean, they're still, they win 4 and then took a year off and won another one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or 3 is that right though? 4 in a row?
Yeah, 4 in a row, you're off, and then 5.
Here's the deal: they'll learn to have a little contempt against the whole country, because that's what it was when we were going for 10 straight. I mean, I remember not even wanting to walk out in Stillwater by Gable because we were getting booed so hard. We go wrestle in the national finals or the Big Tens, and we bring a pretty big crowd, but it'd be a third of the Hawkeyes of the whole gym, because like I said, we'll bring several thousand people in, and then the whole gym will be an aggregate of the other 9-10 teams screaming against us. And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of funny. I was a huge fan. I'm a Yankees fan. I've actually switched to the Cubbies because this bar that I drink at the Waveland, they got half-price beer, and I just go down there and watch the Cubbies. So kind of switched over to them. But I was a Yankees fan because I felt commiserative or empathetic that people hate them, that they were that good. And I also was a Jeff Gordon fan because people hated him when he was having his run, when he was winning so much. I became a fan and a Tiger Woods fan for the same reason you're talking about. Because what people don't realize is that we still have to get up and train. And just because we've evolved, and I took a little bit of, I won 79 straight collegiate matches, but I took a little bit of offense. Like when I'd have a tough match, like I had a guy named Dan Mayo I wrestled in the national finals, and he was very tough. And he was the only guy to beat Chris Campbell in the 92 when the year Chris Campbell took a bronze in the Olympics. And I was telling people, I was pissed off because people were like, wow, man, you really, you had a bad day today, or this and that. And I'm like, they just expected us to win. And that's the one caveat that I would say that it's hard. People don't realize you still have to get up and put your shoes on. Tiger Woods still had to, in his day, had to go out and knock that ball in the hole. Jeff Gordon still had to go race for 4 hours, The Yankees still had to win those games in rough conditions. So it kind of makes you a little bit stronger as a team and a little bit stronger as a following. You have to be a little maniacal with your dealings. You got to be pretty tight. You got to be a band of brothers because it's you against everybody else. So I don't remember all the sequence of the questions, but will they reach Gable's level? I don't think so, because of now people in Pennsylvania and people on the East Coast have other options, okay? Pennsylvania, Ohio State, and Minnesota, Michigan's starting to come out. So there's just too much parity. He's not going to be able to run the tables. And I think some of that Nightingale effect where everybody's going there. There was a time at Gable's program that everybody came here. My roommate, first 4 months, and then I wore him out, was Steve Knight. And I kind of put him in the ground. He was a kind of a PG-13 roommate, and I needed more of an R-rated guy. So they put Brad Penrith with me, and I always tell people I never really got to see him very often. I only got to see him on the weekdays because on weekends he was always in jail. But Penrith was a walk-on, and he was second in freestyle and won the Grecos. It was OW, Grecos. And he's from New York. And I said, Penrith, you probably could have landed a scholarship somewhere. And he goes, where? Where would I want to go other than Iowa? And he made sense. Back in those days, back in the 80s, you had some Oklahoma State was always there a little bit. And then you had Iowa. Then you had Penn State was, roughhousing around. And, you had your, different teams. But really, there was no powerhouses other than maybe one or two. Remember? Minnesota wasn't anything until Robinson went up there. Heck, we won 25 straight Big Ten titles under Gable. That's crazy, right?
A little before my time. It's not like you say you remember. No, I've got to go back, and it's all history for me. But the Terry documentary that came out on Flow Wrestling, and then you were also part of another documentary about the trip with Titan Mercury to Iran for the club duels. The documentary experience where they've got a camera on you a lot of the time, and you're a guy that doesn't really shy away from attention. When you have to, you talked about maybe balancing that intensity. When there's a camera there the entire time, say during the trip to Iran, and you've got to be coaching, do you forget they're there eventually, or is it something that you've got in the back of your mind? It's like, okay, I got to watch what I say here.
Well, the thing is, if anybody knows me, and you know me well enough too, do I really change whether I've got a camera on me or not?
No. So I guess basically there's no point in asking the question, right?
Right. I'm rolling 24/7. I can't be scripted anyway. I know many people come up to me, hey, listen, or do that funny little thing. Listen, I can't be scripted. Everything I have to do is innate. And if they follow me into the bowels of the wrestling tournament and I'm on that side, they're going to hear some pretty dynamic things. And if you get me on a bus, my dialogue does not change on the bus, regardless if there's a camera on me or not.
Now, what about the Terry documentary? I mean, one of the clips of it is talking about recruiting Terry and Tom. It's like, hey, Gable, there's blood down there. I mean, how much of that stuff that you said in those interviews was included, and how much do you think that they left out and be like, oh man, we can't put Royce's jokes in here?
Right. Well, I pretty much, I've done enough public speaking. I know how to keep the lid on certain things. And that Terry Brand video was a catharsis for me as well, because I went through it in 92. I was 7-2 against Kevin Jackson and lost. He beat me. If you can imagine losing to a guy you beat 10-4 in the national finals, beating you to make an Olympic team, and had to watch him go make the gold. I knew it was going to bring those emotions up, and so I was right there for Terry, for his deal, and everything I said pretty much was the truth in that video. I have no reason to embellish that. It was, I like to tell a good story, and I don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story. But no, that's straight up. Anybody that's ever sat and listened to my dialogue, they know that I use the metaphors, and I'll paint a story for you. And that blood, that was very visceral. We went down there. I went down there by myself, and like Apocalypse Now kind of deal, a little eerie. So I knew once I saw a bunch of the blood, and then I saw the mat where you could just tell that they rubbed their knees to the bone on this little horsehair mat on the floor, one of those gray ones that you pull out of an old gym, with the big buttons on them. You knew that there was some stuff going on down that basement.
All right, keeping on the serious questions, Tony White, a buddy of mine from back home in Virginia, asking what your take on was the whole national duels war of words between one Kevin Dresser and the Iowa program, and do you think Brand's going to accept that the challenge from Virginia Tech to wrestle the Hokies? I
don't ever, especially for Tom Brand, I don't ever try to speak for him. But I would say that if I would say that it probably has to come to fruition. And when they come to fruition anyway, if they both in the national duels next year, and you have to wrestle. I mean, we wrestled all the way through for what? We wrestled North Carolina, didn't we?
NC State.
So
yeah,
NC State. Yeah. So it's going to happen. I don't know how soon. Believe me, everybody wants to get Iowa on their docket for a wrestling meet. And everybody wants to come to Carver. And if they say they don't, they're lying. Because it is the best venue to go wrestle in front of,
Yeah, it's one of those iconic places, and I've talked about it. But, I guess that's a wait and see. Now, if you've been listening to the show and you're waiting for Alger stories, now's the part of the program. We're going to ask some questions, and we're not going to know. We're unscripted, Royce, just the way you like it. First things first, and some of these are stories you've kind of briefly told me, so I've been filing these away in my head thinking, am I ever going to have the opportunity to get these on the record? Let's talk about the trip to Mardi Gras and the reaction your bosses got over said trip to Mardi Gras.
Let's back us up to 92, because that had a lot to do with it. In 92... let's even go even further. In 1990, I planned my whole life to be a Division I wrestling coach. In 1990, I took a silver in the world. I graduated from college in 88. And by all practical things, I was supposed to, basically win the Olympics in 92. I was kind of that guy. Beat Schultz, beat Douglas, beat Jackson 5 times in a row. So I lose in 92. And my whole world is kind of falling apart. And I'm like, I don't even want to wrestle. I don't even want to be around here. So Gable put me on as a volunteer assistant. And it's a paid position, where you get paid through the clubs and other subsidies, like from camps and stuff. So it's not like I was making $80,000 a year on the university deal. I was just kind of trying to hang in there. Well, I just kind of felt in my mind, I said, well, I'm going to kind of take 93 off a little bit. And I said, you know what? I'll never, ever, if I'm a Division I wrestling coach, I will never, ever get to go to Mardi Gras. And guys like me need to go to Mardi Gras, just so you have that story. I don't like to be sitting in a honky tonk somewhere and someone says, hey, I remember that time I went to Mardi Gras, and I have to sit over there like, well, I never got to go to Mardi Gras. Well, you know what? I was sitting at the old Vine on Gilbert Street in Iowa City, not the one close to the arena, and the school bus comes up, and guys coming in with 5-gallon buckets of ice, getting ice out of the ice chest because they bought all at the store next door. And I said, where are you guys going? And my buddy Brian DeCoster, that I tailgate a little bit with, he said, we're going to Mardi Gras. And I said, I'm coming. He said, how much is it? And he said, it's $150. This is 93. It's $150. That gets you. We've got 12 cakes. We've got about 40 people. That'll cover your beer. We'll keep these things on ice and CO2. You'll be able to drink all the way up there. Drink during the day off this beer. It's $150 for the ride. You can sleep on the bus. We've got a house we're going to flop at. So I just wrote him on a check that I'm pretty sure probably bounced. And I grabbed just a little bit of my belongings, grabbed some cassettes out of my car because I knew they had a player in there. It was on the Magic Bus. It was an old schoolhouse that it was the original Magic Bus back in the day. And who doesn't want to do – it's like Woodstock. I can't imagine. I wasn't around for Woodstock. But I would imagine I probably would have made it out there just because I'm not going to miss that. Or the Summer of Love in '69 down in Hayton, Asbury in San Francisco. I have to make these venues. If not me, then who? So I grabbed down there, and I just had just maybe 2 pairs of pants and a couple of shirts, and I left for 6 days. I didn't tell anybody. Actually, I might have told – Joel Sherrod had a tough match against Ohio State the next day, and I texted him. Not texted him. This is back before phones. I remember calling and getting him on his place. I said, just kind of coaching him over the phone a little bit, and I said – he goes, well, aren't you going to be there? I said, no, I had something come up. So I kind of didn't tell anybody, but by the time – anytime you try to lie and not tell anybody, the whole – you might as well put an ad in the USA Today because everybody, when you try to hide something, everyone knew that I was down in Mardi Gras. I was lost in action. So I wouldn't trade it for anything. I lost a couple girlfriends on that trip, so I'd like to have at least one of those back.
Wait. You lost a couple girlfriends.
I had a couple girls I was seeing that I didn't. Let's just say this. Somebody asked me the other day if I had a girlfriend. I said, I don't have a girlfriend, but there is somebody out there that probably wouldn't be happy with that statement. So I did. I lost 2 girlfriends on that trip. But any route, back to me, it was a great time. Have you ever been down there? You ever been to Mardi Gras?
When I was like 4, and that doesn't count.
No, it doesn't. And the thing is, too, you got to do it when you're single, and you got to do it when you can run and be able to be up to speed. You can't do it. Once I got, I was just thinking I'm going to be a Division I wrestling coach. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have these kids. There's no way I can make that run. I'd have to wait till I'm 60, and then I wouldn't have the energy for it. So I had to make an executive decision. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. Legendary people have to make legendary decisions. And that was one of them. It might have hurt a little bit afterwards, but it was the right call for the right guy.
All right.
Next question.
This one comes from Kevin Dresser. He goes, who is easier to Buffalo, Randy Lewis or Rick Novak?
Well, Rick Novak. Now the Buffalo game, I'm gonna. You
have to explain it, right? I know what it is.
The Buffalo game is. If you're a drinker, actually Jay Robinson brought it to the masses.
That's who I learned it from.
Right, in the 80s. We would back in the day we could buy cases of beer and drive home on big long bus trips. And if you're a right-handed drinker, you're going to drink with your right hand. So knowing that, if you wanted to make someone in Buffalo, you have to chug a beer with them, but from then on they have to chug with their left hand. Well, drinking innately, you're can't discern all the time. So it's kind of a great drinking game. It's almost fun every now and then to get buffaloed, unless you're drinking 56-ounce schooners at a big English bar somewhere with 2.3. I've seen some guys go down hard. I've seen Randy Lewis puke in his front left-hand pocket because he got buffaloed on a 16-ounce Schaefer Light after eating a Hardee's value meal. I mean, you got to watch it. You just get done with a big meal and think you're just going to take a sip of beer, and you put that beer to your mouth, and you're left-handed, and you're drinking with the wrong hand, and someone buffaloes you. Rick Novak, we had to take out of the game because he just lost all motor skills after about 3 hours, and that's nothing against him. I think it's a medical thing. But Randy Lewis is now officially not a Buffalo anymore. I just had some beers with him this weekend. We went and sang some karaoke over there for Rodney Sullivan's 50th birthday party. Actually sprained my ankle singing karaoke. That's another story. But Randy Lewis had a stroke. God bless his heart. Randy Lewis is a great, legendary wrestler. He had a stroke, and I buffaloed him a couple times, and it just wasn't fun anymore because he couldn't drink one with the right hand, So I kind of made him exempt too. So I hope that helps clears things up for Kevin. Both of those guys are officially off the Buffalo list.
So how did you sprain your ankle singing karaoke?
Well, I was kind of I was doing a little bit of the maritime song, Brandy, and I kind of jumped down. I like to throw a little bit of dancing in there. People that sing karaoke, let me give some of your listeners out there. If you sing karaoke, you've got to have some moves up there. You can't just be that guy staring at the deal. You got to be able to move a little bit. So I was just kind of doing a little bit of stage theatrics. So that's what I'm all about. You know that.
All right. Yeah. And speaking of karaoke, there was, over in Moscow at the 2010 Worlds. They were with the Japanese bar within the hotel. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it was a big, like 40-story hotel.
Marilyn Monroe was the name of the.
That was Tashkent. That was in Uzbekistan. That's another story. But we were. So I go in, and then there's the party, and then there's Royce up there singing, and then Terry Steiner starts singing The Gambler, and Terry in his low tone, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold.
I remember that song. If I could have slit both wrists and an ankle, I would have done it.
Because it was the only one being played. I think I sang it a couple times, as a matter of fact. But all right, moving forward, there's always been this rumor that Royce Alger was the brains behind the infamous Kentucky mud flap. True or false?
False. No, this guy must have his stuff together because I've some people screenshot some things to me. I mean, the guy's sharp and he's funny. He's had to have listened to me talk before because it's kind of some of the mannerisms that I would do, but it's not me. But whoever it is brilliant.
All right. I got it. Okay, the steak knife story. Oh, the story is you climbed a barn with steak knives and track shoes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They called the Tipton Fire Department. Those guys were so long. Well, it was an arrow. I got like 3 of those, back in the day. You get an arrow, get a bow and arrow with 3 arrows. And my brother shot it up, and it hit the cupola of the barn, and it stuck. And it was those old shake shingles. And I said, there's got to be. That pitch doesn't look too. So I got my track shoes on. I used to run some track in the day. But last time I ran any amount of distance, I had a TV set under one arm. But so I scaled the side of the barn. I had somebody, help me. We didn't even have a ladder. Kind of help me up with their hand. I had a big 6'8" kid named Toby Lind out there. He helped me up. So I got up there and Perry knife and steak, 1/2-inch track shoes, and I started going through the shakes. Just kept coming off like it was nothing. So I got up okay and got the arrow, And then I'm looking down, and I'm like, the steep is so much steeper going down, It's always harder on the way down. Remember that. So finally, I was like, that's a big fall, and cement down below, and you had hogs over the one side, and called the Tipton Fire Department, and they were supposed to be en route. I was up there for an hour and a half, and I was getting stung by bees and everything else. Finally, the old man came home from meatpacking and told me to shimmy down the rain route, and I hit a hornet's nest, but they had some blankets that they got from upstairs that they were going to catch me, but I fairly unscathed, but that's a true story, and that's a very tall barn, too. It was about 80 feet high. So it was no joke. So that's a true story, yes.
All right, Akil Patterson chiming in with, how did the Royce Alger Kelly Miller prank start? You're going to have to let me know what are these pranks, what are they, and kind of go into that story, because this is a new one for me.
Well, the Kelly Miller and Royce Alger saga, if you're a fan of Facebook, you know that Kelly Miller came out to he lived in California, and he wrestled at Iowa a couple of years at 42. Never made he was behind the Steiners and some of the better wrestlers there, both Steiners. And he blew his knee out and he left. And then about 25 years later, 2000, about 22 years later, he started coming to Des Moines. We reconnected on Facebook, of all things. And he'd start taking his vacation time and stay here in Des Moines. I'm a single guy. So I had a spare bedroom, and he just crashed there, and he started coming for holidays, and then he started coming for extended periods of time, and then finally he just said, hey, how would you feel if I moved out here? And just moved into that spare room. So I let him move out there, and it just started from that. I mean, it is how many people live with an old teammate, How many men with kids, basically I have one kid that lived with me and one lives with my ex-wife. How many people live with an old teammate? Somebody asked me how that was. Like Mike Novogratz asked me, how is it living with one of your buddies? It's so novel. And honest to God, it's like, you remember that time when you have a friend over on Friday, and so Wednesday and Thursday you knew that he was, and then on Friday you knew he was coming home with you. He was going to eat with you. You guys were going to share that. You know that feeling when you had a friend over.
Yeah. I mean, who didn't love the sleepover? Like, all right, hey, your friend from school, your friend from church, wherever. Yeah, we're gonna eat burritos and play video games until we can't stay up anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's like with Miller. It's kind of fun. He likes to do a lot of things I do. He likes to have some beers. Like he came home last night. He'd been gone for a month. We went to Carl's place at about 5:30, and he's got diverse music, and I got my side of music, and we hit about 7 or 8 places and just had fun. And to be honest with you, he's introducing me to Breaking Bad. I would have never watched that. All this Netflix stuff that I had my shows I watched. I didn't really deviate from. So it's been diversity pretty much, but it's and then that there to answer Akil's question, just from there, just giving each other crap all the time. I live with a 46-year-old man, and it does look a little bit gay sometimes.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing. I tell people all the time, I'm not gay, but I heard some of the guys I sleep with are.
All right.
Next question.
Next question.
Strike that. Stop the presses.
All right. This originates from from a story that circulates about Royce Alger getting pulled over one time by a sheriff or a state trooper.
You're going to have to be more specific than that.
Yeah. So Chris Moen, the "you don't know who I am" story.
Oh, yeah, that was a great story. I tell everybody I have such bad luck with the police in the law enforcement. Last time I went to jury duty, they found me guilty. I also tell the one about my brother and I got caught for beer in our car, and we went in front of a judge, and the prosecutor said we want to get him for possession. The judge says, how many beers did he have in there? And he said, well, Your Honor, he had 15 beers in his car. And the judge says, I'm throwing it out. And they said, on what grounds? He said, I can't make a case out of that. All right, back to the one. I was decathlon in 1990. Might have been 89 or 90. And I was in my decathlon gear, so I was just making some extra money. You know, you can make some money if you got a crew. I had a couple buses, and I went to go take a leak in a post office parking lot right next to Randall's Northside Bar in Mount Vernon, Iowa. Some of the coldest beer on tap you'll ever have, except for the fact it's no longer there. So I was out there, and all of a sudden these two policemen came up, and they shine in. I could see the glitter of their badges and stuff, and lights in my eyes. And I'm thinking they might know who I am, and they're not saying it, so they can see my face, and I've got a distinct-looking face and nose, and from Mount Vernon, Lisbon, are where I'm from. So everybody uses it. So I divined that they must have been out, different cops from different cities, at Cedar Rapids or Solon or something. And I said to them, and they go, well, it's a jailable offense for public intox. And I said, really? And he goes, yep, we're going to need to see some ID. I didn't have any ID on me, which was true. And I said, well, you guys know who I am, don't you? And I seen one guy look at the other, and they said, no, we don't know who you are. And I took off. I ran. I jumped over this fence, and I ran. I ran through a garden. I remember jumping over a tiller, and I was kind of looking back to see this cop, and one of the cops yelled, freeze. And it was just a psyche in my head. And I was just thinking, you know what? Should I stop? But actually, I ran into a kind of a tree. It's a big tree. And that stunned me a little bit. When he yelled freeze, I just kind of just stopped and let him. Generally, I try to run from the police if I can help it.
All right, Rod Gaddy from Alabama. I don't know what this means, but I'm sure you know. It simply says, "What'd you say, Larry?"
Oh, that was in 1989. I just graduated in '88. Like I said, I hadn't lost in 2 years in wrestling, and I went to the Sunkist Open. And I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I'm going to the Sunkist, and I had Kevin Jackson, Melvin Douglas, Dave Schultz at my weight. So those basically those four right now are all 3 world champs and a world silver. So they were at my weight. I ended up beating Schultz, and Schultz teched Kevin Jackson, but I ended up, for some reason, they cross-backed it, and I wrestled Melvin Douglas in the finals of the Sunkist, and I got beat. He 3-pointed me 10 seconds in the match, then ran the whole match. Ended up beating me like 3-2, and I was pissed. So I came home from Phoenix. I came home, and I wasn't even going to go to practice, but I came in a little bit late. I'm just going to come in and roll around. I'm pissed off. And I get in there, and Gable must have been really on their ear or something. They must, because I'd been gone for 4 days. And I walk in, and I'm noticeably about 4 minutes late. It says like 3:04. And I wasn't even going to go to the practice. And Gable looks at me. He goes, "Isn't that right, Melvin Douglas?" Or maybe he just said Melvin. And I said, seamlessly, I might add, I said, "What's that, Larry?"
Oh, how many people can get away with that?
I don't know. I think I might be the only one.
Oh,
I say stuff like that to Gable all the time. I mean, just the other day I was standing by Tom and Terry Brands and myself, and I don't know, it must have been some induction party or something. And Gable was telling us about how he pinned his way through the Midlands 3 times or something. I told him, So that is surprising. You don't really strike me as a pinner. And those Brands brothers, they just get their face so red that when I give Gable crap. But you're right. I'm probably one of the only ones. But Gable knows how I am, though, you know?
Okay. I just got to know with how was that relationship when you were wrestling? This isn't a story. I want to go on that tangent for a little bit. The Gable Alger relationship with the goofiness. You said, yeah, you know when to turn it on, but what are some of the things that you've said like that to Gable that you believe that you might be the only person that can live after just giving him a little guff?
Well, I've told him one time before that after I won the Nationals in the senior that I had a better senior year than he did.
Jeez.
So, but Gable, you know what? Here's the deal. People don't realize this. Gable had crazy buddies like Peckham and those guys, and he used to tell me all those stories about Peckham went up and hunted the state deer that was, you know, famous up there in England. He went and bow hunted it and packed it out and let it out and gutted it and took it home. I mean, there's some crazy people. One of the best stories ever, Gable told me a story one time that his mom, he was the only, well, his sister got killed in the tragic, you know, she was raped and killed, and everybody knows that story. And so Gable was obsessively working out, and his mom would initial his underwear, Dan G, you know, the big G. And so Gable told me that one time Peckham would always come through over to his place and go through his clothes and, you know, steal his shirt. You know how wrestlers steal each other's shirts and shorts, and, you know, it's just kind of a thing we do. And he went through his underwear drawer and put on a pair of his Dan Gable whitey tighties. Well, he went out that night to the Red Ram and had too much to drink and got sick and pooped his pants. He took them off and left them in the corner. They made sure that the tag was there so everybody could see it said Dan G on there. That's when Gable was like one of the most famous guys in the state. So I don't know. Can we say poop on the radio? Or?
I don't know. I've got to say that's kind of a crappy story right now. You need to maybe, you know, it needs to be a little more pungent.
Well, but back to your point, I think I echoed the years of, I've read some of the stuff, and I don't get into reading. I'm more of a guy, I'm not into pictures and books and all that stuff. In fact, I had a terrible accident speed reading about 3 years ago. I hit a bookmark. No, but I'm into the stories and stuff, and I've had a lot of great fun with Gable. He's never been like the trying to tame me down too much. I remember when a pasture came in, we had a new pasture come in. You always have guys, men of the cloth, come in and try to start things in our wrestling room, like, you know, save some people. And I remember Gable telling him to kind of leave me alone. You don't want to change me too much. So Gable let me run my own path. And you know, that individuality is why he was so great, I might add. If I could kind of spawn something off of that, he would let people retain a lot of their autonomy, you know, and be able who they were. You know, you can't put a Randy Lewis in a corner and tell him he can't go out and do what he needs to, you know, go out and have fun. And you can't tell Royce Alger he can't get on stage and sing. And you know, there was times that Dan Gable, a lot, you know, when I'd come in for workout, like sometimes if I was out late, and I'm not saying this for young kids and not many people can do this, but if I was out real late, like at 4:30, maybe got in a card game or maybe a late night party, and we had run at 6, I would just play through. I would show up at 6. And there was at least 2 occasions where Gable just said, well, kind of like, you know how the coach comes out to the pitcher's mound and said, give me the ball, you're going in. He just come out, put his arm around me and said, well, I'll see you at 3:30. We're not going to go down that road today. So he was never real mad about it, only if I started getting beat, but he kind of knew I was different. So that's why I can say that some of the stuff I can do.
All right. How about this one comes from Ed Duncan via Facebook, going back to summer camp 1986, asking, did you actually own the scooter you were riding around on, or was it borrowed? And he adds that Coach Gable thought it was probably borrowed, and borrowed being in quotation marks.
Well, that was actually Rat Martin's scooter. That was
oh, that hits close to home.
Yes. So Rat Martin was my roommate for a while. And Rat Martin, you know, he's the old man, had the Granby school at camp, and he would watch all these matches and take all these notes. And I just kept telling him that damn Granby ain't going to get you nowhere. And I would take his scooter all the time, and like he'd one time he came back, and you know, he had money. We didn't have money, you know, but he'd come back and his muffler would be too little loud. He goes, man, I think something's wrong with my muffler. So I would go and I'll fix that for you. So I told him I'd take it and fix him, bill him for about $380. We go and kind of get some duct tape and put something on. So to answer your question, that's part of torturing Rat Martin. I would use his scooter just about all the time.
All right, and his full name is Steve Martin in this case, for those who are wondering, coach at my alma mater at Old Dominion. You got to give me a Steve Martin story out of this. One that's not going to negatively impact recruiting, however.
Oh, you had to go there. I would say Rat Martin, probably the best story that I've ever said about Rat Martin, there's quite a few. Rat Martin was having an unbelievable year, the year that we were going for 10 straight national titles. And he was probably 20-5. And we had John Regan, who'd beat a lot of the tough guys at that weight. We bumped him down to 118, and they had to wrestle off the Monday before we left for the Big Ten. So this is how tough this was. It was a tough decision on Gable, but Martin was having a good year, but this Regan had already beaten a bunch of people at his weight class, and we were going to put other people, you know, bump some people down with Penrith, you know, move. Penrith was always ineligible until the second semester anyway, but they wrestled off one match, and parents were in there and everything else. It was a serious deal. And they wrestled off, and Regan beat him by 1 point. I think it might have even been a riding point. And afterwards, Martin's crying, and I'm sitting next to him, and and everybody, the parents are still kind of shuffling out. It's real quiet, and Gable goes, okay, now I want, you know, the guy's going to the Big Ten. You're going to go upstairs. You're going to run 5 laps. You can do 3 stairs. I want you to come down. I want you to do like 40 good executions on your partner. I want you to get some good sauna. And I raised my hand, and Gable stopped because he wasn't done yet. He was just about, no, Gable goes, is there any questions? And I raised my hand, and everybody stopped. Even some of the parents were still there. And Gable goes, Royce? I said, yes. Martin wants to know what you want the JV to do.
Ouch. Right there. Oh, heartless, right, man. There. Heartless.
He just lost. He wants to know the JV.
All right.
Anyway, that's one of my favorite stories.
Moving forward, you have quite an affinity for making fun of the town of Tipton, Iowa. Where does that come from?
Oh, well, how much time you got?
All right, let's just talk about the drive-in.
Well, you heard about those 2 guys from Tipton that died at the drive-in in December. They froze to death. They went to see clothes for the winter. But here's the deal with Tipton. Tipton, Iowa I lived on the outskirts of Lynn and Johnson and Cedar County. And there was only myself and about 3 other people that actually attended Lisbon High School that they made us go to Cedar County to get our driver's test. Well, it was a very antiquated, crappy little town that you could only get your driver's license from like Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. or something, you know. So there was people in Cedar County that wouldn't get a lot of people, you know, wouldn't get their license until later. I tell you what, a lot of the girls never got their license until they were older at Tipton either, because every time the instructor would stop the car, they would get in the back seat. Is this thing on? But Tipton has always been, and I had to go to, I was in 4-H, so I always had to go to their state fair. It was always like, you felt like a B-class citizen, just because everybody else got to go to Iowa City or Cedar Rapids, you know, where there was a populated area. And Tipton was just, that was the county seat, so we had all our license plates, Cedar County. It was just a little different. So I've never forgot it, and never forgave them either, to be honest with you.
All right, a couple questions here. One from buddy Andy Ross, who's up in Canada, asking, do you know about the parody account?
Oh, hey.
The parody Twitter account that Royce Alger, fake Royce Alger on Twitter. Do you know about this?
You know what? Some people, like I said, most of my stuff, even my Facebook, someone signed me up for it and got me going. I'm not big into that. And people think, oh, Alger, you see Twitter. I don't have time to Twitter. I don't even know how to Twitter. In fact, I saw a girl last night and I said, I'd love to Snapchat with you, but I don't know what that is. So I did get her number though. But what was
the number?
It was 7.
Okay. So you only 6 more to go.
No, but I've laughed at some of that stuff too. But you know what they say, you know, mimicry is one of the greatest forms of flattery. So you know what, this world is serious enough, and it's going to get even more serious for people when, you know, you got only one time around in this world, and I choose to get up and laugh and be funny, and you know, as long as it doesn't affect you don't want to be a joke when you want to go make money and do things and whatnot. But you know, a good energy and good vibe, that'll get you a long ways in this world. You know, and hard work, gotta work hard. But you know, that's kind of where I've evolved to. But my personality, people even remember me back in college, and I was the guy. Those 2 years I ran the tables, you know, I blistered the people. I was relentless. But anybody that remembers, they remember the fun times we had and the times we went out honky-tonking and singing and dancing. And my son now plays guitar and sings, and that's real fun for me. So I'm going to follow him around, and then I'll try to get up on stage a couple times and with him. And you know, I threw a big 50th for myself and hired a band, and I must have sang for had my son come in, we sang for about 7-8 hours. And so I've always been like that. But yes, I've seen the Twitter account. I don't have anything to do with that Twitter. I don't have anything to do with the Kentucky Med Flap. I wouldn't even know how to get on a message board.
So Mike Porcelli on Twitter asks, who's picked up more travel miles this year, Royce Alger or Noel Thompson?
Well, I'm going to say Noel Thompson he certainly finds his way around as well. I've seen him. I would put Noel Thompson up there with just about anybody. I mean, he impresses me. I'll see him 1 minute in the diversity of who he's with. He's with the Pope, and then he's with Beyonce, and then he's with this and that. He's just out and about. But I'm really not like that. I'm really not. My situations, you know, I'm actually going to Iceland with Mike Novogratz here in July. I'm going to the UFC fights, and then I'll be out to Rio. But to be honest with you, I like being right home at my house. I'm going to be a great old man because I'll have all the stories. I'll be able to walk down to the Waveland Tap about 4:30, trade some lies, maybe take a few liberties, be around there later on at night when some women are ready to make some poor life decisions, and I'll let him do the traveling. I've got about 4 or 5 years left to travel, and then I'm just gonna be a good grandpa I think I got a son that's going to be playing football at Iowa, and then I think he could play pro. So I really do. And we make goals early over here at the Algers. And I'm looking for a good older, the last part of the next 30 years, All
right, two-parter here from Jimmy Jones, who, for those who are not aware, I went to high school with this guy back in Pocosin, Virginia, asking about the first time he met you at the Tampa airport on the way to Cuba, and if the game Naked Apple Butter Slip and Slip is true, and why.
Well, everybody that's a Facebook friend of mine knows that apple butter is very close to my heart, and it's nature's very first aphrodisiac, and it's a water-soluble lubricant as well. But
we might just want to stop there. Yeah, I think I'm going to put. Yeah, go. Just go, man.
What, with apple butter?
Just keep going. Just tell the story, man.
Well, I'm just saying. Everybody asks me. There's some sexual connotations. I think they can pretty much figure it out. But when you live in the hills, things happen, and you usually. So I make fun of that a lot. So I use that as kind of an ongoing that, and Deb Delaney. I always tell people Deb Delaney was the original good time had by all. But any more questions?
Yeah. This is we're just clearing out the questions before we get to our stories, because if you're listening this long, you're like, okay, Bryant, come on, where's the hook here? Where's the hook? All right, this one from Jim Makovsky, the head coach at Minnesota State Mankato, asking you to recall the rock, paper, scissors tournament in the Steiner's Dad Suburban on the way to Montana.
Well, back in the day, and I will take credit for this, I looked at the game of rock, paper, scissors. We had 6 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment, and there was a lot of rock, paper, scissors. But you know what? It was too much. There was got to be some way you can turn it into more like a science, where you could actually craft to some kind of skill level and skill sets with it. And we invented, first of all, a 3 out of 5. 2 out of 3 it's just not enough. You got to go 3 out of 5. 2 out of 3 of 3 out of 5s was the original tournament, where you'd have to place it and you'd have a ref and whatnot. But here's the deal. Let's say if we're going and I beat you 3 times in a row. Well, I win that one. So that's one of my wins there, So 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5. So if I sweep you twice, it's over. But let's say I play you and I beat you 3 to 2, and I didn't sweep you. It was a tight match. I didn't sweep you, so I got to give you a Sally. We invented what's called a Sally. So I give you a Sally because I didn't sweep you, and if I beat you in the Sally, it's over. But if you win your Sally, we go another 3 out of 5. Well, you go another 3 out of 5. Let's say he sweeps me. I get a Sally regardless because I originally gave him one to get in the first place. So if you, just by all that, if you followed any of that, it made it more of a science. You can kind of read what people's tendencies are, what people normally throw for a Sally. We had all kinds of we had a referee's box, we had injury time, and what he's talking about is one time the Steiners were terrible rock, paper, scissors, very, very readable, just like reading a cheap Harlequin book. Well, anyway, I had a real good read on him, and I gave him, like, if I could beat him 8 out of 10, 2 out of 3s, they'd have to do a favor or they'd have to do something. You're in a long car ride, and I beat him. It was on the way back from Montana. I beat him I don't know, mercilessly. So he had to put the other guy's sock in his mouth. And so I took off my grimy sock. I beat him naturally. And I put my grimy sock in I got to stuff it in his mouth. And so I stuffed it in there, and we had to drive 15 miles. Well, the guy that was driving was my buddy, so he slowed down. So Steiner was so pissed and he had this greasy, grimy sock. I don't think I changed it for like 2 days. And he kicked the windshield, and it cracked it all the way up, all the way down, like it just all the way through. And in fact, everything got real quiet because, everybody's wondering what he's going to say. And I asked Steiner if he could crack the window a little bit. So hey, it's hot in here. Crack that window, would you, Steiner? But that's what he was talking about. Long story short.
Oh, man. Okay, so Matt Holt asking, who was the most miserable guy to wrestle in the room with a hangover?
Mark Johnson. Because Mark Johnson wasn't a guy that would roll around, but he would hold you down in positions like hold you there and squeeze you for the lack of not wanting to do. He wasn't much of a wrestler. He was more of a taker. So he would just like a vice. And you get claustrophobic, you're hot and sweaty. At least when you're wrestling other people, you're kind of moving around. But, you had a lot of those guys in there. Lewis was always – I always told the Steiners, a lot of those brands that, you guys think you're mentally tough. You're getting here at 7 in the morning when everybody else is out having fun on a Friday night and we're in a football wrestling workout. So try going out until 4:30 and choking down a burrito and getting 2 hours of sleep to show up. But Leaf Fullheart would be one of those guys that would, guys that didn't go out at nights and stuff. But Mark Johnson, Leaf Fullheart would keep coming at you. Just certain guys that were, getting 10 hours of sleep. And, those guys always really pissed me off anyway.
All right, here's the key. Now here comes the JB Royce stories, because we kind of knew each other prior to 2012, and I'm with USA Wrestling at the time. We're at the University of East London in these dorms that were like jail cells. They were a tubular dorm room, and there was a bed, and the crapper and the shower were in the same room, separated by a shower curtain. So when I say same room, I mean like a 6x6, basically Tupperware square that we were basically living in for 2 weeks. Now Royce finds his way onto the grounds. I don't know how. Actually, I know completely how. Well, it's up to Royce on whether or not he wants to explain that part of it. But the last night, the night that Jake Varner wins the gold medal, actually the afternoon in that case, because the Egyptians totally missed that day, and the day is over early. So I don't fly out until the day, not the next day, but a day following. So I've got a full day in London by myself. Don't know what I'm going to do. Royce is there on the ground. Don't know how. He's there. He's in with the training partners and the staff and everything. And the last night, it's like Royce wants to do a little haunted pub crawl. I'm like, I'm game. It's London. I've been here 2 weeks. I haven't really seen a whole lot. So it's Royce Alger and Ryan Morningstar and I. We're gonna go out. Well, let's just say the three of us crammed in this little room was the end of the experience, and somebody changing my Facebook status, which prompted my wife to text me in the morning. But anyway, so let's just start with one. How did you get on the University of East London's campus, and were you a big person into fencing?
Yes, to answer both of those questions, the reason I didn't have I couldn't get a credential over there is because I didn't do the background check. And I didn't know that you couldn't do it once you got over there. So by the time I got over there, they said, I'm sorry, you haven't done there's no way they could credential you. Well, I was walking. I'm always pretty industrial. I will think on my feet quite a bit. And I knew I've seen a lot of people leaving, like taking bags, and remember we shared half of that dorm or a quarter of that dorm with the fencing. And I looked in the trash can, and there was a necklace with the credential on it for Courtney Kunick. You remember that?
Oh yes, so I remember it quite well. But I'm getting you to tell the story.
All right, so I picked that up and I kind of left-handed it in my pocket, so I didn't know if that was a guy or a girl. First of all, I found out later it was a girl, but anyway, I used that, and it still had good. It was good through the whole Olympic Games. She just went home early with her family. So when we went down to so I put that around my neck, and no one real cared because it was the same. I mean, it was an Olympic. But when I would go down to get into the wrestling, we shared half the venue with the fencers, and I remember I'd warm up like I was getting my arm loosened, like I was getting ready to fence, and I was doing fencing moves, and I'd walk in through with them because it would get me in, and then I'd come through the back and go over to the wrestling. But that was an odyssey because I don't think anybody's ever snuck onto an Olympic venue before like that, you know. But that whole week was, was great when Warner won, and then we went on that. I'd been reading on watching the History Channel and YouTubing. I knew where three of the most haunted bars were in London, and when we went on that walkabout for 2 days, that was one of the best bar crawls I've ever done in my life. We're gonna have to do it again sometime. But, you get those kids raised and whatnot. But
yeah, so I'm going to interrupt here and pick up the timeline, though. So the last night of the games, I'm at the closing ceremonies. I end up leaving early after I'd seen, I think, George Michael perform and Russell Brand and Madness. You remember Madness, Royce? Our house in the middle.
Yes,
yeah. So
I remember them well.
I bailed out of that because the freestyle party was going on, and I had to get on the tube and get down to Piccadilly Circus, find this sports bar, an American sports bar in London. It's like a bad movie, kind of like an American Werewolf in London. Anyway, so we're there. Team USA's around. We're having a good time celebrating. They're running into Kendall down there, and Jordan Burroughs, and Varner lets me wear his medal. And then I run into Royce, who's wearing the badge. He's already ready to go. He's got this pub crawl in mind, but this is where he introduces the concept of the pub crawl. So after celebrating, we walk out of the bar, and Novogratz is out there. I don't know. You remember this, where Novogratz foot sweeps Kendall Cross?
Absolutely, straight to his back.
Straight to his back, runs around and wants to take his medal. He goes, "That's my medal now." So then the nights are closed. Okay, what are we going to do? And so Alger, Royce in his greatness with Morningstar shadowing, because Morningstar can't get a word in edgewise, we just hop in a rickshaw to find another bar. And the guy ended up trying to take us to a strip club. We're like, no, we need to get back to either a bar. Oh, no, they're closed. Take us back to the tube. We tried to get back on the subway, and we lose Kendall. We don't know where Kendall goes. And then we end up not having enough money. Morningstar's got his card. It doesn't work. I lose my card. He's got Scottish money, and we're just trying to get back to the last train to the dorms. And this is where the previous story where we talked about that you got on the ground. So you're fine getting on the grounds, Courtney. But this is where the idea of the pub crawl happens.
Well, I tell you what. Remember I said that planes, trains, and automobiles had nothing on us on this trip because we threw a rickshaw in there, and we were, at least the language barrier was there. But yes, I had it in my mind to do a pub crawl in London. I read up on that. I read up on that place quite a bit. Haunted pub crawl to boot.
Well,
but yeah.
Well, then here's the thing: the planes, trains, and automobiles. We get, and I felt bad for Morningstar. Again, I barely know the guy. It's me, you, and him crammed in a rickshaw. And
you're one of the luckier ones.
Yeah, and we're both, over $2 and change at the time. He's basically right in the middle, and we're just right. Oh man! And then at the end of the night, before we get on the tube, before we cram into our cell block that was the dorm room, we're like, all right, well, we don't know what's going on. We're just going to get back. We get down, and who is the one person in the entire subway at this stop sitting there? Waiting for us.
You know what?
It was
remember.
Kendall. Kendall looks over and goes,
"Oh yeah,
you have got to be kidding me!"
We had that long ride with him.
Oh,
remember that?
Yeah, it's like we got separated, and then all of a sudden, here's Kendall. Like he goes, "I didn't think I'd see you guys the rest of the trip," because he was leaving the next morning.
Oh yeah, no, I remember. You got to remember, that's 4 years ago. I'm over 50 now, and I probably had at least 50 beers that night. I mean, we were on a little bit of a run.
Well, I had a late start. I didn't get there till like right before we closed it down, so I had a chance to slug maybe. Well, I'm not going to tell you. Well, okay, yeah, I probably had 5 or 6 in a short time, just so I could like. All right, I got to have this. The Olympics are done. I can finally actually have a little bit of fun versus working all those 14 straight days.
I drank enough alcohol that night it would have made Ernest Hemingway wins.
So that sets up the pub crawl. And okay, so we got Novogratz, foot sweeping, Kendall. You got gold medalists. I mean, let's just talk about that post party a little bit. We got the freestyle party. Got 2 gold medals. That's what sets all this stuff in motion. But that was a crazy good night for the United States. I mean, Varner comes in there and just basically he'd won a world bronze medal, but then it was like, okay, the stars aligned and he wrestled a great tournament.
That I say it was an ankle pick heard around the world. I was sitting up by his parents up there. They were shaking like a couple dogs passing hammer handles. He came out there and hit the night. You remember that foot sweep? That the ankle pick? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, no. You couldn't have had a better finish with both JB and Varner getting the gold and then Coleman Scott coming out and getting the bronze. And, certainly we left a lot of hardware on the table there with the Laglev and, thought we could have done better at different ways, but you know what? That's why we wrestle. Got to put it out there every time.
So that sets the stage for the Grenadier experience.
Absolutely, yes. The Honda. I knew it in my mind. I didn't know who was going to be on it with me. I knew Morningstar was because I talked him into it a couple weeks before he came. Before we got our tickets, but. Yeah, couldn't have happened better. It was perfect numbers. You don't want any more than 3. Any more than 3 is a crowd.
This is, mind you, I don't know Ryan Morning. I know who he is. I'd maybe interviewed him once in Fargo when he was a senior. But I don't really know Ryan Morningstar. I don't know his personality. I don't know what to expect. And so it's me, Royce, and Morningstar, and Royce goes, we got to take a picture to just document how this starts, and that's the image I'm going to use for this show episode. And I got the last clean
badge on.
Yeah, Royce has got a sheriff badge. I think Morningstar might have been wearing flannel. I'm not quite sure. I just know that the last clean shirt in my bag was one of my Old Dominion wrestling shirts because I'd been over there for 2.5 weeks. So that's how it starts. Now we find a way down there. We're navigating the underground, the tube, and then we come around to what's basically a neighborhood of like diplomatic housing or. We did this loop. We're like, where the heck is this bar? Well, it's off a little side street, and we were looking for a bar called the Grenadier. And there are so many little pubs in London, you can't just say, hey, where's this place? And everybody knows where it's at. I mean, we walked around this thing like 2 or 3 times. I'm trying to use Google Maps or whatever, just killing my data plan. USA Wrestling probably loved the bill from that particular day. But then we're walking around. I think we walk past like the Belgian consulate like 3 times. And then they're like, okay, there's an alley here. Let's go here. And boom, there it is. So we walk into this place, and it is tiny. It's old. I mean, this thing's probably a couple 100 years old. I mean, this place has been here a while. It looks like every English pub you would see, not outside of a strip mall in the United States. This was legitimate. The beer taps were crazy.
It looked like an old house, right? Didn't it look like an old front of an old house?
Yeah, look, Victorian era housing, and it had that. We go in there. I think I got a chicken sandwich, which was, it was England, so it was bland. And then, we start having some beers. We look on the wall and on the ceiling, and there's money from all over the world and people writing their names on it. I was like, all right. So me, Alger, and Morningstar, we write our names down. We get it stuck. But then we start a conversation with Pete. And Pete is the bartender.
You might remember I wrote a check.
That one probably bounced too. So then Royce starts a conversation with Pete, the bartender. We'll tell a little bit more about Pete in a little bit. But then Royce convinces Pete to take us down to the basement where all this stuff from the haunted...
That I saw on the show.
Right. So we get a tour down there, and he's looking around to make sure, because there tourists come through this place for all the time. And we were just drinking. I can't even remember. I know I took a bunch of the coasters, the paper coasters, not like a hard coaster. I didn't steal anything. But So we're down there. Royce, just explain the basement here and some things that started to make you scratch your head about our friend Pete.
Well, I tell you what, my memory's not as good, and I probably had quite a bit to drink, but that place was featured on most haunted as a show, a ghost show in England. Also, remember I was changing my British. I declared it Robert Shaw Day because Robert Shaw is my favorite English actor. So I was So I was talking like that to the bartenders. But we went downstairs, and I said, no, we need you to see the downstairs where they did the show. So they knew that I knew about this. And we went downstairs, and Petey was a very eclectic, would you say, guy that was actually the head bartender, but he was drinking the whole time with us. As you'll know, most British, it's kind of their culture over there. But we went downstairs, and there was tunnels and openings to tunnels and whatnot, that the whole infrastructure to London. But Petey was the guy, very, very eccentric, very my kind of guy, character. And I think did we leave with him, and he left his job.
You started arguing with the owner of the bar, trying to convince him to let Pete come out with us to another bar. We were going to the Nag's Head. That was our next stop. And over there they have a pint, and then they have a short, and they call the short a half beer. And I remember the argument was like, okay, he can go. They're like, he's got a problem. He's not allowed to drink. I'm like, he's drunk now. And he's like, half a beer. Okay, he can go out with you for half a beer. Then it was probably about a quarter mile down the road. Royce gets yelled at for pulling a Mount Vernon post office type of scene. There were no bobbies involved, but let's just say the locals were not happy with that particular thing. Then we end up taking Pete back. And Pete actually had like a cot downstairs in those tunnels. So Pete was spending a lot of time at this bar. Oh, yeah. Listen, one of my favorite things to do in the world, anybody that knows me and knows my personality, one of the reasons I like to hit multiple places is because that's where you find your jokes, and that's where you find your characters. And it's not always about the drinking. It's about the people. So I went on a bar crawl in New York City about 3 weeks ago. It was unbelievable. But London is absolutely, if you ever get a chance, go with somebody that likes to run and gregarious, like if you love to talk and love people and you love stories. Those are the kinds of people that's going to pull those stories out of those people. So that whole night, man, we went. Remember the one bar we went to? It was like a little bit bigger than maybe a Chrysler Cordoba. I mean, it was small. Do you remember that? Yeah. I mean, there's so many different things. And here's the thing: you talked about like to talk. I like to talk. You like to talk. And we've got Morningstar with us. Who? I mean, when does this guy have a chance to talk when you're around?
He doesn't talk. He needs to listen. He doesn't have anything to talk about.
I remember after that actually beginning of that day, I looked at Morningstar. I was like, all right, by the end of this day, we're either going to hate each other or we're going to be best friends. And it was just one of those things, like halfway through the day, I'm looking at Morningstar going, yeah, we're definitely closer to that best friends. And he just cracks my laugh. Then the end of the night back into the cell block, and there's just carnage, bodies on the floor. I mean, I'm a big guy, and the bed was barely enough to contain me. And then there's on the floor, I don't know where Morningstar slept. He might have slept in the toilet for all I know. But it was just like, how do you get three people into this room that was clearly built for a midget? Or excuse me, dwarf. You can't say midget.
Well, that was enough of the small talk. But no, those troops, that's why you do it. Anybody that knows, you love it. If everything was just cookie cutter, there was a couple hotels on my trips that they were so bad they stole my towels. A lot of times the food was so bad, like we went to Cuba, sometimes the food was so bad we prayed after we ate. But my point here is without those decisions and without those crappy places and without Royce Alger going to Mardi Gras his junior year, we wouldn't be talking about it. If I'd have stayed home and did what I was supposed to do, you know what? That wouldn't have been any fun. You're going to be fine. I mean, you got responsibilities and stuff, but it's fun to kind of push the envelope a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. Now let's go to Budapest. You ready to go to Budapest?
Oh.
Okay, so
I'll go to Budapest.
there's I'm going to try to be nice to Royce here on this one because I've got some very incriminating photos of one Royce Alger who decided to sleep sitting up in very little clothing. Made sure he didn't spill his beer, by the way. But okay, so this story is called Gut Wrench Defense with Jimmy Kennedy. So in Budapest, I was staying at the hotel across the street. The training partners and coaches were in another hotel, which was, it was across the street. And, we basically get a couple beers from the little corner shops. And one of these shops was hidden like in the side door of a movie theater, which was strange. You go in and there's just and beer was like the equivalent of $1. So we'd, get a bunch of beers for everybody. We'd just sit down at the end of the day and just kind of, blow off steam. And then, when Royce is around, stories get told, challenges get thrown out. So I believe Royce challenged Jimmy Kennedy, saying that Jimmy couldn't gut him. And Royce, what are you walking around at weight-wise right about now?
I was weighing about 235.
Okay, and Jimmy's probably on the upper side of 150 at the time. He was not making weight at this particular point in the year because he made the world team the next year at 61 kilos. So Royce goes, all right, I'm going to go get ready. Royce walks into the bathroom, comes out wearing nothing but for lack of a better term, a Speedo-like, let's just call it what it is, a banana hammock.
The wrestling briefs, the most serious wrestling briefs, and I always get them one size too small because I like to be snug.
Okay, so he's got the wrestling briefs and a pair of Asics. That is it. No imagination needed. Royce weighed about 235. Somewhat, I don't know how many beverages you'd had at that particular point, but let's just say Jimmy did not turn you. It was close, but
you remember though, I used it as a deterrent because I pulled those briefs all the way up my butt, so they were like a thong. So I was kind of loosening up, and I was spooning everybody. I was loose, touching my toes, but I knew he'd be a little freaked out. So
the most freaked out was the poor girl who was working the hotel desk.
Well, listen, do you remember right before that I rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, we're getting to that. Let's just start with that. So anyway.
Okay, so Kennedy says he's got the best gut wrench ever, and I called him on it, and I said it was puppycock. So I walked in and got into my Superman outfit and came out there, and I'll tell you what, he about broke my ribs. I mean, I wasn't going to turn, but you're in dry clothing. He's in his clothes, his shoes on a dry carpeted floor, and I've got nothing on but a smile and a one size less pair of briefs. It was arduous, but he wasn't going to turn me, not for all the beans and chili. But I'll tell you what, I had front burns. I had burns in where the buttons kind of ripped my skin. But I mean, I had to pay for that. I mean, it's like letting somebody have like 4 or 5 really good shots on you because it isn't sweaty like a wrestling mat. You think, oh, this guy's going to gut me. Well, you slide in a wrestler when you're straight up flat. It's dry out, and the guy's got a long sleeve shirt on or whatever. It was tough, but he wasn't going to turn me. Are you kidding me?
All right. So, also, Royce left this tournament, or left the World Championships with 0 Big Ten titles. You lost all of your Big Ten titles. So, and this was a conversation. They're sitting around. This is before he challenged Jimmy, but I figured that story had to be told before this one. We were not worried about chronology here. So Royce is sitting there talking with Kellen Russell, who's over there as a training partner, and he's just making a conversation. It's like, hey, so Royce mentions how many Big Ten titles. He goes, hey, he's, a little gamesmanship here. He's like, hey, Kellen, how many Big Ten titles you got? And Russell just, kind of just lackadaisical, kind of looks over and goes, 4. And Royce, oh, okay. How does the story pick up from there, Royce?
Well, I don't know. I think he might have been won 3. Or do you think it was 4?
I'm pretty sure he was a 4-time Big Ten champ.
Okay, well, that's something we can look it up. But he was a 2-time national champ as well. So we got kind of back at Caddy. And listen, the younger guys love having me around because I will fight back with them, and I'm like that old senile uncle that they never really got to torture. I mean, they give me shit about my clothes, but they can't break me. I'll be the rock they'll all break themselves against.
And for the record, Kellen Russell is a 4-time Big Ten champ. Just verified that.
Well, I rock, paper, scissors. I put all mine on the line for 2 out of the 3. I didn't realize he knew the game that well. And I really didn't get a good read on him, so I hadn't been around him. I mean, the guy was throwing quad scissors out. I mean, last time I saw quad scissors, the Bee Gees had a hit. I mean, it was bad. So I lost, and I legitimately, in theory, I lost 3 Big Ten titles to him. He's 7-time Big Ten titles.
Yeah, and so in the history books, I don't think Iowa's going to erase it, but Royce Alger, no Big Ten titles because of a one night in Budapest. So, and interesting.
See, I was wondering, only in Budapest, I'm Big Ten-less.
Right. Okay. So now I want to know, after you decide to, I don't know if it was more of a decision than it was your body just going, all right, I'm done. So look over and it's like, oh, okay. You're snoring on the couch, sitting up. What was that more? What was the continuation of after we left and you realize you're the only one left in this lobby with a warming beer and a pair of one size small briefs still on?
Well, I fell asleep. Well, here's the deal. I fell asleep with that beer straight up, and at about 4:30, 5 in the morning, Jimmy Kennedy came up to wake me up. He probably felt bad because he about ripped my ribs up. So I went and crawled in bed with Brian Schneider. He'll tell you. We had 2 beds. I pushed them together so he'd have a double bed. I said it reminded me of home. so I pushed our beds together because we were too small, and we crawled in and just had started talking all night. But I've done that many places. That's my realm. At night, especially when the guys are out there and everybody's together. That's what some of the reasons I do a lot of these trips is just to be around the guys and the competition. Yeah, I want us to all win and stuff, but these guys got to remember at the end of the day, I see a lot of guys that have been real hard on themselves for not making there's nobody in this sport, including Cale Sanderson, including Dan Gable, that is 100, and even Tom Brands, that are 100% happy with everything in their career. Everybody has that one thing that they'd want back, and at the end of the day, it's the voyage, it's the trip, it's the trip, it's the legacy you're going to leave behind. How hard did you compete? Whose hands did you put on and help people out? And so I love having stories like that. I mean, I have a million of them out in Cuba to Moscow, and
yeah, of course, that one night and that one night in Bangkok.
One night in Bangkok. What was the name of that hotel in Moscow?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to. Oh, the Cosmos.
Yes,
yeah.
I was the one that was quoted. Whoever said money can't buy me love has never been to the Cosmos Hotel in Moscow.
That's right, because. Yeah, that's right. Because actually, I have to correct a statement. We really did. The first time we hung out was in Moscow in 10, waiting for the bus. And your job was to keep an eye on Randy Lewis, and you failed.
Well, here's the deal. Well, let me explain. Randy Lewis was in Russia. Was this 2011?
This 2010. This 2010.
All right. So 2010, I'm with Lugo, and he pulls a notorious rookie move. It is 4:45 in the morning. The bus leaves at 8:00. Okay? I said, Lubu, you're not going upstairs to catch an hour's sleep. You won't get up. You've got to play through. You can sleep on the bus, sleep on the plane, but you won't be able to go. If you go up to that room, I ain't going to see you for a while. So we went outside, and I got 2 or 3 beers, and we were sitting out there, and I had all my luggage. I was just laying on it. And I said, Luke, we'll have a beer with me. Lewis goes, I'm going to come up. I got the hotel people. They're going to call me. You know what? I did try to keep an eye on him, but he did sneak out. He went up and he missed his flight. He missed the bus. I even tried to keep the bus and try to get the people to call him, and he ended up flying 4 days later, and it cost him $1,800.
Yeah, because here's the thing: the bar didn't actually close ever. So there's a point where I think it was bags are packed. We're down there. I think the Slovakians or the Czech team or the Croatians or they were down there, and it's like, Americans, vodka. And I looked at Royce. We're like, okay, it was one of those things. Like, well, we're staying up, might as well. So yeah, so
that was back in the day. And that's what I tell people. I said, I'm not saying I've been drinking a lot lately, but my last urine test had an olive in it.
All right. A couple things I want to get to as far as storytelling goes. Just a couple stories since, the legend of Dave Schultz has basically been brought back to the wrestling community with a couple movies, documentaries and whatnot. And, there's an interesting relationship with everybody that knew Dave. And what was your relationship like with Dave? And you got any fun anecdotes about Dave Schultz?
Unbelievable. I have some unbelievable Dave Schultz stories. Dave Schultz and I roomed together all the time when we went to Moscow, 3 times that we were on the same trip, because he was very out there. He was out there in a different way. He could speak the language. He was a shaker, a mover. He showed me how to drink cognac and play chess and mingle with the other. And I was the guy that would take over the microphone on the bus and tell jokes and get on stage and sing in America. I sang the Star Spangled Banner one time in Ossetia, Vladikavkaz. He's the one that pushed me into that. But one of the greatest stories I remember of Dave Schultz, and I've got a couple of them, but these two need to be told. Very first time I met him for real, I went to the Foxcatcher room in 1989. It might have been the summer of '88 after the Olympics, but I think it was around that time. DuPont flew me out there, and I was the young buck, heir apparent kind of guy, whatever. And I remember DuPont wanted to impress me. He had a limo pick me up at the airport, and he drove me to the workout facility. It was 3:30. So I came in to practice at 3. So I came in, I was watching practice. Afterwards, this guy came over, bald head, I knew it was, Schultz. He said, "Do you want to go tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Good, 1 o'clock." So I'm thinking, I've seen it already. I know what the times are. So I show up the next day. I'm kind of a little pensive because we didn't really talk, and he lived in a house that was away from the manor house where I stayed. So I walked into practice about 10 to 1, and he's against the wall, and it's dark. If anybody's ever been to the Foxcatcher wrestling room, it's big, and sometimes it gets dark. Sometimes they wouldn't turn all the lights on, so it's kind of a hue, kind of a different feel to it. And they had a big swimmer's clock in there where you could see the time, so you could, figure out the timeout real easy if you were wrestling. And I remember going and sitting by him to put my shoes on. He gets up and goes across the room. So I'm thinking, well, this is strange, but this guy's ready, and I was ready to go. I just won my national title for, 5-6 months late, in March. This was like early November. So I get up there in exactly at 1 o'clock. He comes to the center, and we're looking at the clock. He kind of looks over the clock, and he shakes hands, and then he hits one knee. He says, "Go." And so I get down to one knee thinking, this is so strange. And he jumped up, and he front headlocked me. Anybody that's ever watched Schultz, he had a real kind of he called it the bunny hop. He got real low, and then he jumped as high as he could and front headlock you. Well, I caught part of it. Naturally, anybody who wants to front headlock somebody has to have a head and an arm. Well, he caught my head, but part of my arm was in there, so I was protecting my carotid artery, but he was still kind of wiggling down like a snake on that side of my head. And I remember my head was turned. I was looking at the clock, and it said 102, 105. About 108, we were still in the same position. We held that position for 8 minutes. And it was like a battle of wills. And all of a sudden, like, my left eye, like, started going blind. And then my side of my body started going blind, and my legs started twitching, and my hand. And then I don't remember anything. And I woke up, and I looked at the clock. There was like 4 glasses of 2 glasses of Gatorade, 2 waters, a bunch of towels around me, wet towels. He'd made 2 trips, which was about 60 yards to the training room. I was probably out for about 5 minutes. He about killed me. That was my first time I ever met him. And you know what? I've told that story, and everybody that's ever met Schultz for the first time has had some kind of experience where he really dialed them in. I mean, that fear was always in the back of your mind. So to say he was a very carefree, whatever, no. He was one of the most, he was an unbelievable nice guy, but on the mat, he was absolutely a tyrant. And let me get one other story that I'll never forget. Both Brands and I went to Foxcatcher. I got them both signed on. This was a year later. A year before this was 92, a year before they won the World. They were out at Foxcatcher, and I was out there, and we were staying for like a 6-day training camp. Well, in the mornings, the Brands and I would always get up and go do some sprints and lift and bungees and sauna. So we'd come into breakfast about 8. Well, Schultz would come in about 8:15, like, man, you Iowa guys are always training. Why do you have to train so hard? Man, there's other ways to win and this and that. So about 3 days in a row, he would come in, just how he'd saunter. Well, I mean, you don't know, but he kind of saunter in like, oh man, you Iowa guys, you guys are so strong. Well, one morning, like 4 or 5 days into it, I had a bad shoulder. I Bill Shear blew my shoulder out on a kind of a whizzer kick, and I posted. And I got up a little bit earlier because my shoulder was giving me problems. I was going to run and try to really stretch, so I got up earlier. I couldn't sleep, and I was running in the woods, and I heard some grunting, and I came to a clearing, and there was this hill, and there was Dave Schultz in full Army gear at 5:30 in the morning with 60-pound bags, one each, so 2 bags, one on each shoulder, running hills. So that guy was working out away from everybody and getting that. And you know what? After I just went on running. I watched him for a little bit, came back. I showered up and whatnot. Schultz came in the same time he always did, about 8:15. Looked like he just got out of bed. Man, you Iowa. I never told anybody about that story. I might have told Terry Brands that story. But, I figured I didn't want to give his mystery away. But Dave Schultz, that's an unbelievable story. And that's how I view him, as a fox, a guy that postulates something but is 100% an assassin. Almost a double life.
You also once told me a story about the Schultz Triathlon that he would sometimes do at this time of the day as well.
What's that?
The Schultz Triathlon.
The one where he you mean the biking, running, and swimming?
No, the running hills, hunting deer, gutting deer, that story.
Oh, yes. Well, he was always out killing deers and stuff at the, his private property and stuff, but he was always out shooting bow and doing things. Schultz, very first time I went over to Russia with him, I roomed with him, and after the tournament was over, he had the most unbelievable match in the semifinals. He was wrestling Varayev that got killed. By the way, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Okay,
well, not all meets the eye about that thing. If they think he just fell off a cliff, I think there's another thing coming. Any route, Schultz was down by 2. Imagine this, down by 2, 14 seconds left to go, and he's on down. So Varayev's on top. Schultz stands up, he locks him, and throws him for 3. to win the match. Well, after the tournament was over, we went down to, he came to my room with 2 Crown Royal bags, one with chess pieces in and one with chocolates and Crown Royal. And we went down to Arbot Street and played chess for like 9 hours. It was one of the most unbelievable experiences. He could talk. And those Russians can really play chess too. So it was more of just me getting my butt kicked and drinking cognac and drinking chocolate, eating chocolate. But yeah, Dave Schultz was. In fact, Dave Schultz and I had promised each other that we would climb K2 when we were done. When we were done wrestling, that we were going to still keep our shape, and we were going to go climb a mountain to prove it could be done. So we were going to go out and raise money and everything. So he was a lot more than just a wrestler and a luminary for wrestling. If you ever watched that movie, that new movie out that had Patrick Swayze back in the day and Keanu Reeves, where they're kind of X Games guys, where they're on motorbikes.
Point Break.
Point Break.
Did you just say just came out? That thing is like 30 years old, man.
No, but the new one just came out.
Oh, that's right. They remade it. I'm not gonna.
I know, but I watched it with my son the other day. But still, those guys are like. It reminds me of him. It reminds me of pushing envelopes in every direction. Surfer, mountain climb, jiu-jitsu, chess player, crazy workout guy, cool as hell. I mean, it was just more than just a wrestler. He was kind of a really, really cool kind of surfer, kind of laissez-faire guy, you know?
All right, Royce, now we're going to get to a rapid-fire part of the program. It's called Short Time because I couldn't come up with any better names, because that's basically what it is. Maybe 10, maybe more questions. You just on what the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't need full explanations, just ready to go. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, question 1. What's the best match you've ever watched?
Probably the John Smith and Bella Glazo match when they first came out. Like, what was it, like 9 or whatever, when Bella Glazo moved up and thought he beat Smith and stuffed it.
Who's the best wrestler people don't talk about?
Chris Campbell.
All-time favorite flavor of Gatorade?
Lime, always.
Your favorite international wrestler outside of yourself?
I would say Raul Cascaret.
You win the Powerball. What's the first college wrestling program you're going to start?
I'd start Frank back up there in the boy.
Who's the best JV guy on your high school team?
Andy Wendler.
What's your favorite restaurant on the planet?
I would say Iowa River Power Company in Iowa City.
Yeah, I've been there. Good place. What's your spirit animal?
It'd have to be a black stallion.
What's your favorite flavor of beer?
I'm a Coors Light guy, 100% now. Used to be Miller Lite.
Who's the funniest Hawkeye not named Royce Alger?
Funny guys, man. There's a lot of guys that try hard. Rick Novak's pretty funny.
All right.
As long as stealing my material.
All right, and real quick, Royce, are you hungry at all?
I've been known to eat, yes.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite flavor of hand soap?
Hand soap. Nice.
Oh, that's anyway. Just that's not an actual question, but it's one of those things. I looked at Royce one time and said, "Royce, you want to grab something to eat?"
Oh, no, thanks. Just that I hit that all the time.
Yeah, I love that.
That
one.
really puts. You know what?
Well, you got to finish it. So you didn't even tell people what the response is. Hey, Royce, you hungry?
No, I just had a bar of soap in the car.
Yes.
What it does, it just puts people it kind of sets the mood so quick and lets them know that you're just kind of a funny guy and this and that. And I've just been using that. Do you use it at all? Like, don't think just had a bar of soap? Do you use it?
Sparingly, but I usually am telling a Royce Alger story that reminds me to say that joke.
I came in the other day, there was about 8 guys at a table, and I was a little bit late. And I said, listen, guys, I'm really sorry. I'd have been here earlier. I was at a family restaurant, and I got kicked out. And then they're always like, what happened? And I said, I had an orphan with me.
Oh, that's so bad. Anyway, Royce, I'd like to thank you for your time. We'll have to get you back on the show sometime soon. As you get more stories that you want to tell, by all means, give us a buzz, and we'll throw them out there. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Royce Alger, the floor is yours for anything you want to do at the end of this program.
Me? No, I tell you what, it was I enjoy it, and I'll have more stories. We'll just save them for another time. You were pretty much. How long were we on today?
We're still going, so we're approaching we're well over an hour and a half.
All right. Well, I don't even take vacations this long.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Royce Alger. So a lot of stuff there from the one, the only Royce Alger, taking his time out on the holiday weekend to help issue episode 1000 of my podcasting career, and episode 260, whatever it is, 269. Royce would find a joke in that somewhere, of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. This is your first time listening and you made it through the marathon. Thank you for listening. If you like this story, we got a bunch of stories, topical anecdotes, interviews with the top names in wrestling. You can subscribe on iTunes by going to matttalkonline.com/get-short-time. That'll take you right to the iTunes link. Also got free iOS and Android apps available in the iTunes Store and on Google Play. This podcast found wherever good podcasts or even bad podcasts are found. Spreaker, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Spreaker. We got it pretty much everywhere. Your podcast player of choice. I prefer Overcast, but anyway, if you like what we produce here on the Matt Talk Podcast Network, we got 14 live shows, 10 of them done by yours truly, and you can become a team member by going to matttalkonline.com/join the team. Hit up the contribute link, and right there you can become a patron. Various different plans that you can contribute to this network. T-shirts are pretty much off the press. They'll be here soon. So those of you who are at the certain levels of monthly donations, your shirts and draft glasses are in the mail here. As of we're recording this on July 4th, guess what, folks? Baby number 2 still not here. Hopefully by the end of the week. But if you're listening to this after our baby has arrived, we've got another child here. So we got that coming. Got Fargo, got the Olympics. But anyway, thank you for your support and contributions to this network. This show specifically would not be possible without the support of the wrestling community and, of course, Compound and Flips Wrestling. But this is mainly a crowdfunded show along with the Hall of Fame Legends podcast. So matttalkonline.com/join the team, click the Patreon link, or go to Patreon, that's patreon.com/matttalkonline. You can contribute there. That's all I got for you. Remember, you're always spending your time, and when you spend this much time with me and Royce Alger, we know you've always got time for Short Time. Thanks for listening. The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is brought to you by Flips Wrestling. Share your attitude and be heard at flipswrestling.com.
Brown cow.
How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow?
Selling seashells at the seashore, not as easy as it sounds.
I like to lick a lemon lollipop in Lilyhammer. My wife's like, my wife's in here. My wife's in here in the office. Is like, can I be in here when you record? And I'm doing this. She goes, I can't listen to this.
show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.